Well, here we go again, ready or not. As I've said many times before, I'm going to keep doing this until I get it right. You are listening to KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, at 103.3 FM and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. And this is the Midnight Skeptic. The views of the Midnight Skeptic are not, repeat, not necessarily the views of KPCA or any of its affiliates. Okay, this is show number 42 of the new regime, where I also do this on YouTube at the same time that I'm recording it for later transmission to KPCA LP 103.3 FM here in Petaluma. Okay, this is Wednesday, the 3rd of November, and I'm sorry to say that the election in Virginia didn't turn out how it should have turned out, but I'll go into that a little bit later. I just got to tell you that the views of the Midnight Skeptic should be the views of Petaluma Community Access and all of its television stations and radio personalities, and especially the KPCALP radio station, of which I am going to be broadcasting this show that I'm recording right now on this Sunday, the 7th of November. And the views of the Midnight Skeptic should be the views of every thinking person that listens to this show, thousands and thousands of listeners. I have no idea how many listen to it locally within the range of the FM station, 103.3 FM. But I have a number of people across the nation and a couple around the world that listen to www.kpca.fm on Sunday nights at 9 o'clock when I normally broadcast this. And then I'm getting more and more listeners all the time on the show as it's broadcast on oh God, I'm getting off to a bad start here on YouTube. That's what I'm trying to say. But okay, if you have suggestions to send in about how this show could be made better, and getting rid of brain freezes might be one way to make it better. Okay, but that's what comes with the territory of getting a bit advanced in age, you might say. Okay, anyway, if you have suggestions or hate mail or telling me to go blank myself, send all of those suggestions to themidnightskeptic@gmail.com. I will get it, and I will rigorously contemplate what I should do about these suggestions. Okay, shout-outs. Shout-outs. First of all, my international listeners who listen in really worldwide on Anchor.fm. I have listeners in Germany now, and actually I have 2 in Ireland and 2 in Australia, 1 in New Zealand, and that's just the ones that Anchor, who disseminate this show mainly on Spotify, but there's other venues that they shoot this out to the world, and they keep track of who's listening. Okay, 40% of my listeners, such as they are, are from the age group 45 to 59. 60% of the listeners are male. That means I've got some women listening to me blather on out there. Don't you have anything better to do with your lives? Okay, just joking. Okay, the international listeners, got that out of the way. Nariman here in Petaluma, you listen in occasionally, and I'm going to be calling you up to see if you might want to get together for sharing a wine at the downtown wine bar. Anyway, Tom and Nancy Throw, and then Stan and Kathy out in Pacifica. Stan's the one who gives me suggestions now and then and tells me where to go. And then Rich and Kathy out in Sebastopol. Tim Conrad locally, great photographer, ex-Sonora High graduate. Okay, East Coast, Geraldine Goldfinger, and then down in Raleigh-Durham, Dr. David Rubin, and down in Florida, Nelson and Alice Lydell, and then across in the St. Augustine area, specifically in Edgewater, Amelia Beamer, a great editor, writing coach, etc., etc., etc. If there's any writers out there that would like some help with your writing, she's great. Okay. East Coast, let's see, got that. Arizona, my brother Brandon and his wife Mina and his daughter, who is a nurse. That was Nick, just coming downstairs. Hey, he's waving. Okay, anyway, Andrea, the nurse, take care of yourself and wear your PPE and hope all your patients are vaccinated. I know that vaccine shouldn't be, but it has become politicized, and specifically Republicans are exercising their freedom and liberty by just not doing it, which they should, just for protecting society. Okay, and and up in Sacramento, Karina Hilliard, as long as we're in Arizona, she's down in Patagonia and is one of their animal control officers down there. I call her the snake lady, snake removal technician. She listens in now and then. And in Sacramento, Dave and Rosie Takach, that's a Hungarian name, Takach. And then now Mickey Huff lives up there in the Sacramento area with his wife. They just moved from the Petaluma area, but he's a professor of history and communications at Diablo Valley College, so he has a little ways to commute. And he himself has a show here. Let's see. Well, it's about 4:45 right now, but his show was at 1 o'clock on KPCALP 103.3 FM. And then it's repeated again in Berkeley on KPFA. Very interesting guests on his show and very interesting topics, plural, that he covers. I would listen in if I were you out there. Okay. The Virginia election. Greg Youngkin won over McAuliffe, the one-term governor from a previous term, I think 8 years ago or so. But anyway, Youngkin is essentially a Trumper, part of the Republican Trump cult. And the New Jersey election, which went on yesterday as well, is still too close to call. And it really shouldn't be that close. The Democrat Murphy, according to the polls, was quite a bit ahead. And I just have to wonder whether or not mail-in votes were delayed by that creep that's our Postmaster General now, a holdover from the Trump administration. I I would hope that somebody would investigate that. Okay, I'm not saying that Trumpers cheat. They would if they could, but anyway, enough of that. Okay, Texas. It probably seems to most of you out there that I've been unduly picking on Texas lately. Well, I have been because of their, well, it's a Republican controlled state. And, okay, here's the latest thing from Texas. Texas State Representative Matt Krause, Krause. He's a candidate for state attorney general now, and he has just promulgated a list of roughly about 850 books sent to school superintendents and he's asking these superintendents to confirm whether these books are in classrooms or libraries. Books that pertain to race or sexuality or that make students feel discomfort. Oh, geez. Texas students feeling discomfort? Oh, gee. Oh, come on now. School districts in Texas are split over how to respond to this request by Krause to let him know whether their books are in their libraries or schoolrooms or whatever. The Fort Worth ISD, that stands for Independent School District, will comply, and Austin and Dallas school districts will not comply. They aren't going to let him know whether they are or not. What's he going to do about it? Well, if he gets elected state attorney general, well, there's a lot of things he can do about it. Bring some kind of bogus charges against the school district personnel. In the emailed letter to the Texas Education Agency, Krause, as chairman of the, okay, now get this, Texas House Committee on General Investigating. Well, if that isn't a wide-ranging power for a committee to have, I don't know what is. They can just investigate anything they feel like that's, I don't know, un-American or un-Texas-like or un-Republican-like, whatever they want to investigate. Okay. For the welfare and protection of state citizens. I'm telling you right now that Republicans don't give a crap about Texas state citizens as long as Republicans can remain in power. In addition to the roughly 850 book titles, you can go online, Google it, and Google Matt Krause if you want an actual list of the 850 books. I didn't do it. I mean, I looked at them, and they're the usual suspects. But anyway, in addition to the roughly 850 book titles, he asks, and this is a quote, "Please identify any other books that address the following topics. Human sexuality, sexually transmitted diseases, or HIV or AIDS, sexually explicit images, graphic presentations of sexual behavior that is in violation of the law." Well, what practices are in violation of the law? In Texas, gay sex was, these two guys were arrested. I went into this about 2 years ago on one of my shows, and I can't remember their names, can't remember the name of the case, but these two gay guys won, and then sodomy was no longer a crime in Texas. So, well, I wonder what he's thinking about here. Okay. Sexual behavior that is in violation of the law, or contain material that, okay, now here it is, might make students feel, discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress. Isn't that what being a teenager is all about? Psychological distress? Especially in Texas. Okay. Because of race or sex, or convey that a student, by virtue of their race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. Oh, man. The very word dystopia is going to be applied to Republican-controlled Texas very soon. Well, I'm calling it a dystopia. Okay. Speaking of the Virginia election, a lot of parents, otherwise intelligent parents who might have voted democratically, kind of swung over to vote for the Republican Youngkin, mainly because of the novel Beloved by Toni Morrison. That novel, Youngkin made it a political issue. Got to get that book out of our classrooms. It was an award-winning book by Toni Morrison, and I've not read it. Full disclosure. But there were some scenes in it, especially when this runaway slave lady, when she's about to be captured, kills her 2-year-old little girl. And rather than have her captured by the slave catchers, this is in Civil War times, this novel was set. But anyway, it's an award-winning novel. And, high school kids sometimes have to read things that, are a bit upsetting. Have to read things that are from a different point of view, both racially and sexually. Okay, on to happier things. More good news. MGM, or MGN, more good news, about the environment. I promised some of my listeners who emailed me that, gee, I need to have more good news on this show. And so, well, here it is. Okay, the transition from internal combustion engines in cars to electric vehicles is ramping up. Yay. Toyota, Stellantis Corporation. Okay, well, who are they? They are previously known as Fiat Chrysler. And, trying to... I don't know why some of these corporations change their names to just... Because I guess they've gotten a bad reputation about things and just want to try to run away from their previous image. And Fiat Chrysler is now Stellantis Corporation, and then they teamed up with Peugeot, the French car maker, P-U-G-E-O-T, and they're switching over to all electrics, and they've set 2030 as their goal for that. Okay, Foxconn Electronics. Now, they aren't specifically a car maker, although they produce some of the internal workings of some Chinese cars, and so they're, for their own benefit, is pushing electric cars in China, and then Volvo up in Sweden, all made an announcement that they were devoting more and more resources to electric vehicles. Ford and GM are going to build 5 United States battery factories in anticipation of the rapid shift to electric power. Okay, that's all very, very good news. Okay. As I talked about on a show about a year ago, dried seaweed added into livestock feed drastically reduces methane emissions from cow farts and burps. Okay, and that may sound kind of funny to you all, but they are the number of cattle, both dairy cows and beef cattle, contribute quite a bit to methane in our atmosphere. And methane, as I've said before, is a greenhouse gas, and this chemical, methane, CH4, is a more efficient trapper of heat in our atmosphere. The only good thing about methane, and it's not actually a good thing, it just doesn't hang around in the air, in the atmosphere, as long as CO2 does. But, that's the one thing that can be said about methane. Okay, now there's a local angle here. Locally owned Strauss Family Creamery, they're all over Sonoma County, plans to use the seaweed additive on all 12 of its farms that supply the creamery. Dairy cows are the source of 45% of California's methane, according to UC Davis. That's where I went the first year right out of high school. Of course, back in those days, I just wasn't ready for college, and so I D'd my way out of UC Davis and into the Navy, where I became a meteorologist. So anyway, water under the bridge. Okay, UC Davis. Okay, and they're the preeminent agricultural college in the United States. So if they've been researching something and say that it works, then it works. Okay, I'm off my notes again and riffing. I get in trouble that way. Dairy cows are the source of 45% of California methane, according to UC Davis. The goal is to reduce methane emissions by 40% below 2013 levels by 2030. I hope we can do that. Okay. Hawaii's Blue Ocean Barns grows seaweed in Hawaii and San Diego. They have a warehouse production facility there in San Diego for the purpose of adding it to cow feed. Well, they have to dry it first and then grind that up into a powder before it's actually added to cattle feed. But they're doing it, and adding it to cow feed. Taste testing, which was done again by UC Davis, shows no difference from cattle or dairy products that did not get seaweed additive. So, good thing. Okay. On the good news front and related to the cows, remember how a few shows ago I was talking about Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat? You know, the two local companies again. They're in the Bay Area here, and they are the purveyors of plant-based meat substitute. Burger King is using one of them. I think they're using Impossible Beef from Impossible Foods Company. They're plant-based meat substitute. And then I said, now this was like 3 or 4 shows ago, that look for lab-grown meat to soon be, in our restaurants and on the meat shelves of your local supermarkets. Well, okay, here they are. Well, in a warehouse-sized lab in Maastricht, Netherlands, lab-grown meat from real cattle. Okay, specifically uh, limousines. Okay, I think I'm pronouncing this right. I should have looked up the pronunciation of this, but it's a breed of beef cattle, and I'll spell it for you: MilimousinS. It kind of sounds like it should be limousines, but I'm not sure that that's how that's pronounced. But they're a breed of cattle, prized for their quality beef steaks that butchers get off of them, and restaurants there in Maastricht, Netherlands, pride themselves on serving meat dishes using that breed of cow. Okay, what what this company in the Netherlands is doing is they have um, a qualified person, a veterinarian of some sort, comes out to the cow, the living cow, and takes a little bit of their muscle tissue, and then he sews up the incision point, and he applies a topical painkiller, and the cow doesn't feel it. Okay, he takes that little bit of muscle from the cow's flank, and they put it into this small muscle samples from the flanks of these cows. They're processed in a nutrient-rich growth medium to produce both muscle cells and fat cells to enhance the taste of the eventual ground beef-like product. Okay. And the name of the country is MOSA, MOSA, meat. And this is the startup company that in 2 years will bring its product to market. And also the costs are going to have to come down drastically. Their production is going to have to go up. And, when you make a lot of something, the individual units of things go down. Well, it's going to have to come down quite a ways before it's actually affordable in meat markets and restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but they're confident that they can do this. And more than 70 other startup companies around the world are vying for investment money to deliver lab-grown beef, chicken, pork, and fish to a hungry world. And I think I mentioned on that show previously that Singapore, that independent city state, has already approved lab-grown chicken nuggets. Okay, so things are moving right along. Okay, Hastings College of the Law. Okay, there has been a rush lately to rename everything if some person a street or a city or a college or a school has been named after, has been found to be a rather disreputable person, or has done things that are just not right, racist or mass murderer. You aren't gonna you aren't gonna see any grammar schools with I don't know. I can't think of a mass murderer right now. My mind is not really working that way right now. But okay. UC Law School, which is Hastings, there in San Francisco, is going to drop the founder's name, which Hastings. Okay. The governing board of UC Hastings College of the Law in San Francisco voted unanimously Tuesday to work with state lawmakers to change its name. Now, the Tuesday they're talking about is not yesterday, but I think it was, a week ago yesterday, that Tuesday. All right. The ugly truth about its founder, Serenus Clinton Hastings. Now we're getting into California history here. A wealthy 19th century rancher and a former Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. He sponsored massacres of Native American people in Mendocino County. And it's what he has done or did back then has increasingly come to light in recent years to the horror of the school's leaders, alumni, and their descendants. And descendants of the Yuki, Y-U-K-I, and other victimized tribes. That legacy is a stain associated with the name and the college. To move forward with this is the right thing to do. Claes Leuvenhaupt, a great-great-grandson of Hastings and a member of the school board of directors, like right now, said of the name change. Okay, well, good for him. Okay. In 1859, Hastings, who had also served as California's Attorney General, handed Governor John Weller a petition from white settlers in Mendocino County asking that a militia help them eliminate an impediment to their expansion. Well, what is this impediment? Well, it was the First Nations people that were living here before the whites came. Okay. This article says, okay, it explains what the impediment was. Okay, the area's Native Americans. Okay. As the settlers moved in, their livestock decimated the area's indigenous people depended on for food. So tribes retaliated against the whites and were brutalized in return. When action from Weller, and that's Governor Weller, wasn't immediately forthcoming, historians write that Hastings masterminded a plan for the settlers to hunt and slaughter Native Americans themselves. They were going to take it upon themselves to make a militia. The campaign he helped finance became a part of a 3-year murder spree known as and I encourage all my listeners out there to Google this, the Round Valley Settler Massacres. And they were up near Clear Lake and up into what's now Mendocino County. California settlers back in the 1850s and 60s were not kind to indigenous people here. I'm glad that as a state, California is owning up to these things and not afraid of, what's our version of critical race theory, unlike the Republican-controlled South, where they revere rebels and traitors, the Confederates. Okay. Hastings used his money and clout to enforce the mass removal. Well, that's a good way to put it. Removal. Killing is more like it. Of tribes from their land, support their enslavement, and yes, we did have some slaves here, not of blacks, but of indigenous Americans, indigenous peoples. The first slaves were enslaved by the Father Sarah and the missions that were built up and down the state, the northernmost of which is here in Sonoma. But a lot of the Indians or indigenous peoples that were enslaved by these Catholic missionaries uh, wouldn't put up with it and they ran away. Well, if they did that, they were brought back forcefully when they could be and were severely punished. Hmm. Good old Catholics. Okay. Let's see. I'm off my notes again, as you can probably tell. With the deal in 1878 came a new state law. The school in San Francisco shall forever be known and designated as the Hastings College of the Law. It would remain independent of the UC Board of Regents, and a descendant of its founder would forever hold a seat on its governing board. Okay, that's where this, what was his name again? Claes Leuwenhaupt. Okay, that's why he's on the board. He's a great-great-grandson of Hastings. Okay, but in an era of rising backlash at memorializing the perpetrators of atrocities, which the killing and massacres of our indigenous people is, efforts have intensified to remove Hastings' name. Let me back off just a minute and riff a bit. The San Francisco School District Board of Supervisors was embroiled in a controversy about a year ago when they decided to rename 44 different schools in San Francisco, including Lincoln High School. Okay, well, why would they want to change the name of Lincoln? I can't get into the minds of these school district people, but apparently he was insufficiently woke. I guess that's what their thinking was about this. He himself didn't own any slaves, and they wanted to change the name of Washington because he owned slaves. Well, okay, those are the ones that are the better known, but there was a lot of grammar schools in San Francisco that were named after this and that and the other historical personage. Well, the Board of Education in San Francisco, I guess, had nothing better to do with their valuable time than to look at renaming these schools and make them all politically correct. I'm not for that, and I'm glad that three of the on the Board of Education in San Francisco are about ready to get recalled. I'm all in favor of that. I'm not so in favor of it that I'm willing to get out there and collect signatures and all that kind of crap. But if they get recalled, well, good. Maybe they can think about something better to do with their time. Another one up here closer to where we are in Marin County is Sir Francis Drake Highway. Okay. All right. Sir Francis Drake was a English, depending on your point of view, he was either a pirate or a privateer or a hero in England. Well, he raided the Spanish possessions up and down the Pacific coast here. But apparently he was the owner of a few slaves. I think for that reason, there's a movement in Marin County to rename Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And there is a stretch of it, I think, going through Fairfax, and it's not all the way down into San Rafael. But okay, I'm having a brain freeze on the name of the town that's between Fairfax and Santa Fe. But there's a stretch of Sir Francis Drake that's been renamed, and well, suffice it to say that I'm against that. Just leave it. It's way more expenses and disruption than it's really worth. Okay, back to Hastings. Okay, where am I? Some of the alumni of Hastings School of Law are quite impressive. Ex-mayor of San Francisco, ex-speaker of the Assembly, Willie Brown. That's where he went. In fact, Willie Brown. Vice President Kamala Harris. Okay, she went to Hastings. U.S. Representative Jackie Speer, Democrat from San Mateo, and Willie Brown. I mentioned him. I'm not. Okay, this is a quote from Willie Brown. I'm not terribly proud of carrying the Hastings name on my law license. There is no forgiveness in this, said Brown. Also, former San Francisco mayor and member of the Hastings class of 58. Okay. Trial lawyer Joseph Kotchett, class of 64, is perhaps Hastings' most generous alumni donor. Half of the roughly $10 million he's given helped establish the Kotchett, C-O-T-C-H-E-T-T, Kotchett Law Center at 333 Golden Gate Avenue, which opened last year and is part of a major Hastings Law School expansion. Time check. Okay, I've got plenty of time left here. Okay, Hastings definitely needs a name change. That's what he's saying. Says Senator Scott Wiener, Democrat of San Francisco. Okay, this is he's sponsoring the bill that would make the name change. State Senator Scott Wiener. Wiener is expected to introduce legislation perhaps next week. That would allow Hastings to be removed from the school's name. If that happens, would Hastings heirs request a return of their ancestors' investment plus interest? Nah, it's not going to happen. No idea, Leeuwenhoek told the Chronicle. Leeuwenhoek, who descends from Hastings on his father's side, is the article runs out at that point. Enough of Hastings. What else? I've got plenty of things here. Okay. Okay. This is a good one. Governor Newsom signs a law mandating courses in ethnic studies be part of graduation requirements here in California. Okay. Well, I'm sure that Republicans will have all their underwear in a knot over this one. High school students in California will be required to learn about the contributions and oppression of people of color in America under a measure Governor Gavin Newsom signed Friday. Now, this article is October 10th, so it's whatever Friday is right near there. Okay. And Assembly Bill 101 is the bill submitted by Jose Medina. He's a Democrat from Riverside, California. He adds a one-semester ethnic studies course to the state's high school graduation requirements for public schools, starting with the 2029-2030 academic year. It wouldn't be that difficult just to have this start next year. Jeez, why are all these bills taking so long? Schools must also begin offering ethnic studies courses as an elective by the 2025-2026 school year. If it's an elective, why can't they just add it next year? Jeez. Quote, no, who's saying this? Okay, Governor Newsom said this. America is shaped by our shared history, much of it painful and etched with woeful injustice. Hear, hear. Newsom wrote in a signing message, students deserve to see themselves in their studies, and they must understand our nation's full history if we expect them to one day build a more just society. Okay, but according to Republicans, our little students are just too delicate to be exposed to this. I really disagree. If this material is presented correctly and our history and literature teachers are trained in the right way, this can be presented in such a way that let me go back to some of the things that this jerky Texas guy said. Okay, I'm going back to Matt Krause. Republicans, God. Okay, like I say, if this material, which is injustices done to minorities here in this country, it won't cause discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any of the other psychological distress because of their race or sex. Okay, they won't necessarily feel all this stuff if it's presented in the right way. And they're not that delicate. They aren't going to run home to their mommy's and daddy's Republican household and, oh, I'm a white kid, so I'm an oppressor. That's not going to happen. Only in the fever dreams of Republicans would that happen. Okay. Okay, so I'm all in favor of that. Okay, I lost my article here. Okay. Ethnic studies required for a high school diploma here in California, but it's not going to happen for half a decade at least. Almost a whole decade. Ah, Jesus. Should be done sooner. Okay, let's see. I want to find out who's objecting to this. Well, we all know who will object to it. Republicans. Okay, but opposition to the bill enacting a requirement for high schoolers dissipated after the State Board of Education approved a model ethnic studies curriculum for public school students this past spring. Earlier, draft versions of the ethnic studies guidelines prompted a torrent of complaints, Republicans. Many of the comments focused on concerns that the curriculum evoked anti-Semitic stereotypes or needlessly dwelt on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. When these things are proposed, curriculum changes is what I'm talking about. It seems to me anyway, and this is my opinion, that every ethnic group tries to insert their own unique gripes into it. And I think this Israeli-Palestinian thing is an example of that. I've said on many shows before this that religion in general has been detrimental to the human experience throughout human history. Ever since Homo sapiens displaced the Neanderthals in Europe and displaced the Denisovans in Central Asia. You know, the first quote-unquote religion that was foisted off upon Homo sapiens, after they settled down into agricultural communities, were men who claimed that God talked to them and therefore gave them power to control who you marry, when you marry, how much you can drink, and blah, blah, blah. It's been downhill for mankind ever since the first religions emerged. Okay, so which brings us to what set me off there. Let's see. Palestinians and Israelis. Palestinians are predominantly Islamic, and to some degree there are Islamic extremists in the Palestinian community. The group that controls the Gaza Strip now. Oh God, see, when I get off my notes that I didn't plan on talking about, then I get off my notes. Well, okay, but there's extremists in the Israeli community as well, in the Jewish community. So I see it as predominantly a religious war over in Israel versus the Palestinians. And I'm open to arguments that I might be wrong about that. The ethnic studies movement began in the late 60s in San Francisco State when students at San Francisco State University and UC Berkeley led strikes to demand courses about people of color. Well, I was living in San Francisco around that time. And I have to admit that when I heard about this, that I thought it was kind of a novel demand and a disruption of, the normal things that go on in colleges. Well, I think that I would have benefited at that time by studying ethnic studies, blacks and Native Americans and Latin Americans. Okay, the inclusion of ethnic studies in high school curriculum is long overdue, Medina said in a statement. The signing of AB 101, Assembly Bill 101, today is one step in the long struggle for equal education for all students. And so I'm all in favor of this. And it's only one damn semester anyway. It's not going to detract from any of the other studies, or at least it shouldn't. Some Republican legislators said the course is inappropriate for high school students, arguing it is, rooted in critical race theory. I'm telling you, Republicans just don't know what critical race theory is. They're just too stupid. Yes, I said it. Republicans are, by and large, just too stupid to know what critical race theory really is. That's why they're all part of the Trump cult now. This is my opinion. It's the right opinion, but it's an opinion nonetheless. Proponents of this AB 101 say ethnic studies courses are shown to help students of color improve academically because they feel empowered by seeing themselves reflected in textbooks rather than Eurocentric versions of history. And the history that we do learn is definitely, without a doubt, Eurocentric. Well, a lot of things happened in the world besides, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. As a matter of fact, We just celebrated, well, we're celebrating now, this year, 2021, the 1000th anniversary of the Vikings making a settlement in Newfoundland. Now, this has been established as the year 1021. And I'm riffing again, but there has recently been dendrochronologically dated structures in this Aux in. Oh, I'm trying to torture my memory cells by trying to remember the name of it. But anyway, it was given sort of a French name, Aux, Auxen. Archaeologist, anyway, just got through excavating this, and through both carbon-14 dating and dendrochronology have definitely dated this founding of this settlement by Vikings. Actually, okay, explorers from both Greenland and Iceland. I don't know whether they considered themselves Vikings or not, but that was a name applied to all, Swedish and Danish and Norwegian explorers or coastal raiders. They're Vikings. I'm going to look up to see where that name Vikings came from anyway. They didn't call themselves that. I know that for a fact. Okay. Enough riffing. So, thus spake Zarathustra. I'm going to play my out music right here. Last show, I almost made it, and they cut me off at 58 minutes, and all of my out music and announcements and all of that got cut off. So here it is. You have been listening to The Midnight Skeptic on KPCA LP, Petaluma, California. And we're at 103.3 on the FM dial and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. Support community radio at patreon.com/Petaluma Community Access. And remember, think critically, think logically, but live joyously, and most importantly, pet your cats. Okay, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to pet your cats. And I will see you next week. I might be going back to every other week because there's so many things happening recently that I went for a long time now to every week. So I may or may not keep up with this schedule. But anyway, I will see you next week for sure. Pet your cats, and if you can, go on to Patreon and donate something to KPCA. Okay? I will see you guys when I see you.